2 squares a piece, 4 squares a slice. It's free to listen at half the price. It doesn't matter if you're a boy or a girl. The brothers of Battenberg will show you the world. Oh, I don't like it outside.
I can't bloody blame you.
It's horrible, isn't it?
Come in, it was snowing and sleeting and sludging and God knows what.
Windy
And I've
pops
got another 9 layers on. 9 layers today.
9 layers. That's quite few for you. Usually you're in double thickets.
My record is 12, I think.
Yeah.
12 layers for the Queensbury winter, and the wild Grizzly Adams look.
Yes.
As well. Yeah, that's only because I can't afford a haircut. But, yeah, absolutely. So how you been? Been a while, haven't we?
It's been a while.
Been a while.
Is this officially Bob Series 2?
I don't know. Yeah, we can do. It can be Bob 21 or 2, or it can be Series 2. Shall we go with Series 2?
Series 2, yeah, Bob 2. You saw Bob in a different form, didn't you, on your way here?
I did, yes. Came out of the cricket practice in February. How scary is that? It's all right. Spring's on its way. Spring's on its way.
That's what they keep saying.
Cricket practice, and it was 8:08.
Yes.
And it just looked like Bob. And I thought, that's good omens for Bob.
Digital. It is.
Good omens for Bob.
Here we go. So now I'm good. I'm fresh. Done a couple of walks up hills in the last couple of days, so I'm feeling reinvigorated.
Well, I'm impressed with coming up the hill to Baildon with Storm Dennis. It must have been at your back, was it?
Yes, I decided to embrace it. You know, you can think of these things in a way like, oh no, I'm not going outside. It's too horrible and wet. And the rain wasn't too bad, but actually, it's really nice. It's rare sometimes. It's quite rare to have these extreme conditions and to embrace the weather when it's that windy and kind of that cold. It's quite actually nice. I enjoyed it.
Well, each to their own. And personally, give me a nice sunny hot day anytime. I've got to tell you, with no wind whatsoever, and that will do me completely. So we better explain what we do. So is Bob 2 any different than Bob 1? Or can't be, can it?
I don't think so. Bob 2.0.
Bob 2.0.
Bob 2.0. Bob 2. Bob. It's what the aim of the game really is to start a conversation.
It is. Start a conversation, often about subjects that are difficult or funny or just part of life, really.
Yes, definitely. Anything and everything to start a conversation with.
So we bring 2 subjects each,
and
each subject is a square.
Yes, 4 squares make a slice, hence a slice of Battenberg. You know, with the 4 squares.
And I don't tell you what I'm bringing.
No, he doesn't.
And you've got a bloody glint in your eye.
I always do.
I know, but it frightens the bloody life out of me, to be honest. So yeah, it does.
Cool.
Yeah. Well, I've brought a couple of crackers tonight, I think,
good.
anyway.
Good,
or at least something that will start those conversations. So that'd be good.
Excellent.
So, Side Pie the Poetry Guy.
Yes.
What's your first square this week?
Oh, am I going first? Do you not want to go first?
Well, I can do if you like. I've got lots. I've got notes. I notice you're noteless again.
Yes. Well, I'm.
What have you brought? You brought some banal or something, haven't you? Or something that you didn't need to research. When I was talking to you about this, you said, "Oh, I've been researching. I've got 2 subjects all ready to go for Bob." Yeah, notes. Look at the notes, people. 0. I'm going first. Definitely. And we're going to start Bob 2.0 with a doozer.
Okay.
You're white, aren't you?
Well, I'm considered. I'll tick the box saying Caucasian. Yeah.
Caucasian.
Yes.
Not Caucasian.
Caucasian.
You just like saying cock on the radio, don't you?
I love saying cock anywhere. Down the street, down the pub, in the toilet, at the dinner table.
Cock. Bantams.
Got cock on lockdown.
Cock on lockdown. Yeah, mine's been on bloody lockdown for a long time, I'll tell you. Well, tonight, folks,
yes,
we shall handle the tricky subject.
Go on.
White supremacy.
Oh, here we go. God,
White
I shouldn't be doing that, should I?
supremacy.
Bring it down.
And I
Bad
thought,
white man.
I'm a bad white man, obviously, and
Yes,
so
well, we
are
both
you.
are.
Well,
Yes.
are we? I don't know, because it is a minority standpoint, but it is the belief that white people have a supremacy over all other races, and it seems to be. It's been in the news today.
Yeah.
This wonderful request by Dominic Cummings, who's Prime Minister Johnson's seemingly right-hand man, who wanted weirdos and misfits to essentially apply for cabinet jobs. I think that's probably
a quote.
That's a quote.
Wow.
On the grounds he wanted new ideas. Okay. Well, he's brought some old ones out of the woodwork, I'll tell you. And there is this guy in the news today, and he's called Andrew Sabisky, and he's a prominent Tory. Well, not particularly prominent, on the grounds I don't think many people had heard of him until they had this clarion call for misfits and weirdos. And basically, he is a eugenics believer.
Wow.
And a eugenics believer is essentially a white supremacist.
Yes.
Somebody who believes that white people are
behind you,
exactly.
white supremacy.
And he's called for the compulsory contraception of black people due to their lower IQs in the past.
Really?
And also their lack of worth to society.
Their lack. And
this man is now in government in the UK.
Which position has he been given?
I'm not entirely sure. I try to find this. What they seem to have done is brought together a group of people from which young Bojo will choose his cabinet. But Boris has refused to comment.
Well, he always does on the difficult things, doesn't he?
And his office has merely pointed journalists to his previous comments on such matters.
What, like the post-box stuff? About
like calling people, women, Asian women or Muslim women with burqas, full-face burqas, essentially looking like letterboxes, and black people looking like pickaninnies with watermelon smiles, and I despair to some degree. But what I wanted to do was essentially look at a little bit of the history of this, if that's all right.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah. A white supremacist, this is the definition, is a person who believes that the white-skinned race is inherently superior to all other races, and that white people should have control over people from other races. White supremacy also refers to the political or socio-economic system in which white people enjoy a structural advantage, i.e. privilege, over other ethnic groups on both a collective and individual level. That's, in a nutshell, what white supremacy is. It is the belief that the Aryan race, the Nordic races, if you like, the blonde hair, the blue eyes, and
the Aryans,
the Aryans, yeah. They essentially are the most intellectual, most capable, and therefore should be in charge of the world, essentially.
Yeah. It's interesting. I read today actually the Aryans came.
No, I'm the Aryan.
Yeah.
In my beard, but yes.
It's Iranian.
Is it?
Yeah, originally it was a tribe. They come from Alans as well. A pejoration. Anybody called Alan in the UK actually comes from Aaron, which is Iranian. So if you're a white supremacist and you enjoy being a proud British Alan, it's actually derived from the Middle East. Well, a bit south of there. So there we go.
So Alan is Aryan or Orion?
Alan is a pejoration or what have you of deviation from Aaron, which is Aaron, or an Aaron, an Aryan.
Oh, I see. Yeah, it's close, isn't it? I can see that connection. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Well, in terms of the history of it, it was most prevalent or became most fashionable, if you like, although I suppose white supremacy had been around for a couple of millennia before that, really. But it was the German philosopher Schopenhauer, right, who essentially attributed reasons to climate. Basically what he said was, and this is seemingly not in any question, is that the darker skinned races, if you like, were the first races of the world.
Yes, that's generally right.
But those that then migrated northwards, his proposition was that those that migrated northwards had it more difficult. And as they settled northwards, their skins lost their pigment in many ways, and they became lighter and lighter in terms of skin pigment. But they also had it tougher because the climate was harsher, was harder. And therefore, he proposed that the people who emigrated early in those times, the Nordic races, if you like, had an intellectual capability that was above everyone else in the world because they'd had to be more adaptable in adapting to the climate difficulties of going north. So essentially, I mean, from that perspective, you could argue that northerners in England, for example, were substantially greater intellectual capabilities than the southerners of England. No, it's very flippant. I find it extraordinarily sad that, in many ways, such silliness has been used over best part of a couple of 100 years to essentially cloud the minds of people in terms of believing such utter nonsense, because it is nonsense. If you place two people of different coloured skins in the same nurturing environment over a long period of time, they will essentially even themselves out in terms of intellectual capability, the same schooling, for example, the same amount of money and the same amount of opportunities. That essentially creates generally people of exactly the same ability and exactly the same worth. And in terms of any other argument, the pseudo-scientific arguments around metabolic rates, in terms of the way in which the physiology is different between people of different races from around the world, because that is true, but it don't make it better. It don't make it better in any shape or form, or worse for that matter. And it's something that I find very difficult to accept is still around in 2020. It feels like something that should have died a death an enormous amount of time ago.
Yeah, I mean, when you first brought the subject up, what sprung to mind for me is that the encouragement still or belief of white supremacy, for me, breeds the exact opposite of that, which is other kinds of supremacy. So black supremacy or Chinese supremacy, Indian supremacy. There's all sorts. There's already has been in history a backlash against white supremacy because you had Black Power movements, which you could argue was in some ways equally racist as white supremacy movements. Let's just get.
You just turn the fire off, lad.
Oh yeah.
I might not be able to last the show without that on.
Well, if you start freezing up, we can put it back on.
I'll freeze.
But yeah, so that's my biggest concern really when it comes to white supremacy. That's very easy for me to say because essentially I'm in the all okays club.
Me too.
The other guy that the recent dabblings I've had in this came through a guy called Akala, I believe his name is, who is the brother of Miss Dynamite, who people may be more familiar with.
Yeah.
Miss Dynamite, all that.
Oh, you did that so well.
Well, there we go. And they were brought up. They were mixed race, Scottish father, brought up in quite a poor area of London, and he wrote a book chronicling his experience of almost being between the two. He was very white for a black man, and quite dark for a white man. So he found himself, as I say, between the two races, if you like, which were interesting for him, I guess, and when he's spent time in Jamaica, has made he's a British man almost over there, pretty much. Whereas over here, he's seen as, a man of colour who's not necessarily of British origin. People will, he's had his fair share of racism. And what he talked about was the fact that so many white people are completely oblivious to this white supremacy that goes on because they're part of the system.
They don't recognise their privilege.
No, exactly. They don't. He knows he's black because he's treated differently and it happens on a daily basis. But nobody knows they're white in a white society because it's just the norm. And those kind of things I certainly took for granted. Like, we wouldn't do racism. What's that really? I've only personally felt a little bit of racism, I think, once in my life. That's when I was in Switzerland, and this guy, I was just in outside a bar chatting with a couple of guys, which were very friendly, and from out of nowhere, this guy came up and went, "Hey, fucking British bastard, or have you?" And he was drop another bomb, and he said something about basically a bombing that had happened in Sweden during World War Two. I had no knowledge of myself.
No, mate.
Because, yeah, and probably we were kept quiet about it. They didn't want to tell us what we were doing, what atrocities we were committing, happening all over the world. But yeah, like, we were the first to use chemical weapons, stuff like that. And very few people knew that Churchill was the first one to test them on the Russians and in Lebanon, I think, or Iran. Might be Iran. But anyway, those things are kept quiet to keep the good name of the British and the white people squeaky clean. And yeah, he was like basically hating me before he even knew me because of my British connections and the fact that this atrocity had happened at British hands.
Okay.
And that was the first time I thought, wow, that's a bit of racism right there. Or,
did he still hate you once he got to know you?
I didn't really. The two guys I was speaking with were just like, ignore him, he's a wanker, and that was the end of it. So no, I didn't get to know him at all. But I'll go back to the white supremacy. I mean, yeah, it's been talked about it's been happening for a long time, with the belief of it still. I mean, very much, it's being revitalised almost, isn't it, with Brexit, which is very sad.
Very much so.
Sad to see.
And I think that gave a voice to the xenophobes. It gave a voice to the racists. And I would not caricaturize Brexiteers per se as being either of those things.
No,
what I would say is, though, that on the margins, and certainly the alt-right margins, that certainly gave a license in many ways, or they saw it did. Now, in terms of groups and what does white supremacy look like? I mean, in history, it's looked like slavery. I mean, I'm not saying that everybody who's ever been a slave is essentially black or not white. What I'm saying is that essentially slavery was about maintaining the master race, if you like, the white race. It was about meeting all our needs and using people as a currency in that, because those people were worthless in many of the eyes of those that were carrying out such activities at that time. And because slavery is still around. Apartheid, another one from my youth and my childhood, that's very recent history. And some would argue there are certain countries of the world that are still apartheidic. I certainly read an article last week about Israel being very difficult to sort of say that it isn't a single race, stranded race country, if you like. Now, I know it isn't, but it's going that way, if you like, from a protectionist perspective. And the sort of groups that have come up in history as being very easily identifiable as white supremacy or white supremacist, Ku Klux Klan in the States, and Nazi Germany, of course, and many, surprisingly many organizations throughout the world who are either proposing such views that white people are better in every single way and supreme and should be in control, and arguing because they are better, therefore they are better suited to be in control, or they are essentially using religion as a field for that. A lot of these organizations are ironically Christian.
Yes.
There's a big one in the States called Christian Identity, for example, that essentially uses the scriptures in order to prove essentially that their views on race are absolutely sacrosanct.
Yeah.
And that's appalling. So, I mean, in terms of groups, there's the Orion Brotherhood in the States, there's the Council of Conservative Citizens in the States, the European New Right in France, Ku Klux Klan US, European National Front, European Order, all these various parties across Europe and across the world. In England and UK, we've got Britain First, we've got Blood and Honour, we've got the British National Party, we've got Combat 18, we've got the National Front. All these organisations have members. And there are substantial numbers of people that still believe in 2020 that the colour of their skin makes them somehow better, both morally, ethically, and intellectually, than somebody with a different coloured skin. What a load of old bollocks.
Yes.
And the sooner this is, I mean, it's already against the law to propound such views because it is seen as hate speech. And hate speech is against the law. However, it's insidious, it creeps, and you tend to get people sort of posting and trolling online from this perspective. And you wonder how it makes them feel. Does it make them feel better about themselves?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head with the hate there. It all comes through hatred of others. There's no love in this white supremacy, because you say it's looking down on people and thinking that they're worse than you.
Yeah.
And when it boils down to me, it's like if you hate somebody, in order to justify that hate, they have to be different to you. Because if they were the same as you, you'd have to hate yourself as well.
Yeah.
So, in order for that hate to work, you've got to see people as different species, different aliens, animals, whatever you want to justify that hate, and through that comes this white supremacist view. And that's the worst thing for me with all these things. None of it's about unity or getting along. It's completely opposite, isn't it? It's about tribalism and boils down to hatred.
It does. It does indeed.
It's hatred.
It does indeed. Now, I wanted to just bring us back, just full circle, if you like, to the major leaders of the world at this moment in time. And the vast majority of leaders in this world are very, very fair and even-handed in terms of, or would like to be, and perhaps are moving towards a more equal society. But there are others that are pulling away. And I can't help but feel that people like Johnson and people like Trump are pandering to that audience to some degree. And when you bring somebody like Andrew Sadisky into the forefront of British politics and don't even chasten him on these views, that just opens the door. And I think there is no doubt that in order for, it's the old William Blake saying, for the triumph of evil, it is necessary only that good men do and say nothing.
Yeah.
And in those, from that perspective, I am certainly saying white supremacy, not in my name. It's a waste of talent, it's a waste of belief, it's a waste of energy, and it is insidious and heinous. And everybody, in my view, I want a level playing field for my children. And often in Britain, I don't feel like I've got that because I'm not particularly well heeled in terms of finance. And finance does make a difference in terms of people's starting points in life.
Well, that's where it really boils
my
it
kids
down
are
to.
white, and without money, in a poorer environment, and I've also had the kindness of others in terms of my family and my family background, and I've been very lucky. And I reckon I probably have had a relatively level playing field, and I've just fucked it up. And I want that for my kids. And what other parent in the world wouldn't want that for their kids? What other parent wouldn't, or what other person wouldn't want that for themselves? And white supremacy drives a coach and horses through that. And if there was a Room 101, which I know there is, then white supremacy would be my first thing into. And the attitudes and beliefs inherent in that, first things in. It's got to go. Clamp down, I say.
Clamp down indeed.
Clamp down.
Oh, white supremacists.
Okay, so I think we've probably covered that, haven't we?
Yeah.
Yeah. And Trump and Johnson, get your bloody acts together. Stop calling countries shitholes and stop making absolutely fallacious arguments about people's looks that take nothing into consideration of what their beliefs are and what kind of people and talents they have, because you're just bloody wasting them. That's it.
Okay.
I've got that off my chest.
There we go.
There we go. So, Side Pie the Poetry Guy, what's your first square this week?
My first square, well, to be honest, I thought we could just do nothing.
Nothing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that all right?
Yeah, sure.
Just chill out for a bit.
Yeah, sure. No problem. Is it beer?
Yeah.
Is that what your first square is? No,
I'm
it's just nothing.
out.
Chilling out.
Yeah.
I'm prepared to chill.
Good.
Do I get a beer?
You want a beer?
You got smoke as well.
I don't already smoke.
A few tablets.
I was hoping you could.
No. Oh, 1664.
Yeah.
Yeah, these will be available. These won't be available for long now, will they, with Brexit?
Well, they're not.
No, Cronenberg. So is that it? Nothing?
Yeah, I just thought we could relax. Been working hard.
Have you?
Yeah, well, we both have.
Has anyone noticed?
Just take a square off.
Take a square off.
Cheers.
Okay, I'll go along with it. It's lovely, that.
Yeah, it's nice.
Aye.
Just relaxing.
Yeah.
I have brought a square, actually.
He flinched! He flinched! He flinched!
I've got one.
Oh, yeah. What you got, Side Pie? Thank you for the beer, by the way.
You're very welcome.
That was a little bit of a surprise, I've got to say. Yeah, you buying a beer is a first.
That's not fair.
No, it's not true. It's not true either. It's not true either.
My first square is home.
Home? Where the heart is?
Yes.
Yeah?
Well, heart is where the home is.
First page of a website?
Yes.
A homepage?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Well, yeah, I've been off the internet quite for the most part, but home is something that there's been it seems to be coming up. The students we had at the weekend filming their film.
Oh yes, that's called Home, isn't it? Yeah.
Home.
Yeah.
And last week I had well, I was looking for some stuff, some essential spiritual guidance. I don't know if you want to call it that, but it's some sort of guidance. And I went back to what I call one of my favourite contemporary yogis, Adrienne, who...
You have a contemporary yogi?
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm on the yellow stove.
She's a lady from...
Jellystone back!
Yeah. No, she doesn't do picnics.
Okay.
She doesn't steal them.
Sorry.
She's a yoga teacher, I guess, or a YouTube phenomenon, really. She's got around about 4 million subscribers.
Okay.
And it promotes free yoga, basically. Her mission in life for now is to give free content of yoga and share yoga with the world. And that's what she's done. And she's slowly built a business around it. But
free yoga to the world.
Yes, I'm a massive fan of her. She's very charismatic and is very, like a lot of yoga can be potentially quite pretentious, and she really goes the other way.
Pretentious?
Yeah, some people take themselves very seriously with it, and she doesn't, which I really enjoy. So
it's not. There's not a sort of underlying reason. She's not bending them to her will.
To her will. Well, she's a good-looking girl. I mean, I'm sure that helps, but it's certainly
It'll
not.
Help me.
Yeah, there we go. And she's brought out a new yoga series called Home, as well, which is about reconnecting with yourself or re-energizing something, reactivating something in you. So that really resonated with me because I'm looking at the moment, or I'm reconnecting with what I consider home in me, and that's not a place, that's not a person, that's not a thing. It's essentially, without being too funny about it, a way of being and feeling. So home is something that I'm very much feeling at the moment. I feel at home. I'm feeling more and more centered within myself.
So is a feeling at home for you is basically when you're feeling a sense of self, a sense of belonging, a sense of
it's a sense
you're
of
going well?
serenity. I mean, I was talking to you about Lao Tzu, who's the Chinese philosopher, and he talks about the Tao and how a lot of it's simply about not thinking at all, having no intentions, and just really going with that. And that's what I've been doing for the last week or so, and it's working wonders.
I thought you were going to say 30 years then.
Well, you'd have thought so, but no. I'd say that overthinking is something very easily done by myself, has been in the past, but no longer am I doing that. I'm really enjoying kind of being. It's this. What I really love about Lao Tzu in this home thing is the paradoxes. So you do one thing to go the other way. So in being incredibly selfish, you actually have a lot more of yourself to give to others.
Oh, I see.
And by being
love begins with self.
Yes, doing what you don't.
You
want
love
to
yourself,
do.
you can love others far more easily and far better.
Exactly. Yes. So things like that are wonderful, and not thinking allows the right thoughts to come along. So things like I've been thinking far clearer, and I've got a lot more done by this inactivity. Like it talks about inaction brings action.
Right.
And that's wonderful. I'm really enjoying it. I'm getting lots more done without having the thoughts that I actually need to get anything done. I don't need to get anything done. Everything's already done.
Okay. Has anyone noticed yet?
I don't know.
I've not.
No.
No, but that's probably because when we're together, we tend to be in the doing phase, if you like. We tend to be doing something and accomplishing tasks, if you like, and have a clear view of what those tasks probably should be.
Okay.
So is it outside of the work environment, or is it inside? Is it throughout the whole of your life?
Well,
don't let me confuse you.
It's a process for one thing. It's not like a switch, so it does take time to do these things.
Okay.
But I don't know. Is the answer to that one?
And it doesn't matter, I guess.
No, it doesn't.
As long as you feel that you are where you should be. Is that where home is? Where you should be? Where you feel most comfortable? Where you belong?
Home is I'd say a feeling of centeredness. I'd argue, and a home is feeling at peace with oneself and one's surroundings.
You've got your friends, haven't you? You've got your homies.
Yes, exactly.
People who belong in the same sort of space, same sort of feel as you do.
Yes, I think you can find home in others.
Yeah.
But it's on the whole, it's not. You can't look for it from them initially. I'd argue.
No.
That's the wrong way around of doing things, potentially.
Okay. So what else is there about home? For me, home is about belonging, no doubt about it. And home is where the heart is. So wherever you feel at your best. I mean, for me, my spiritual home is probably on a riverbank. My current home is my new flat in Shipley.
Yeah.
Which do I feel probably greater serenity in? Both. Because they're both my spaces that I choose to be in and inhabit.
Yes.
And I suppose I make them mine in that regard. Do you shape your home?
Oh yes, I think you do. The home. I feel at home at the Mes. I remember taking my desk up there for the first time and feeling like I'd found a home of sorts, like an industrial home in terms of like creating something and a platform for myself to do things. I feel at home there. I feel bloody cold as well.
Oh God!
And that
I really can't tell you. I mean, when you can count them. I mean, there's just. I'm like the Michelin Man. Mind you, I am putting on a bit of weight as well, but crikey. Yeah. Without those layers, I would just freeze. I'd just absolutely freeze. And when you lose your core temperature, you lose your ability to think almost.
Yeah.
You lose your ability to feel and touch and do the sort of hand-eye coordination tasks, if you like. But with me, I also lose my well-being. So being at home is for me about well-being, and a sense of place is about well-being, and that it's feeding me.
Mm. Yeah, that's it. When you talk about like you shape your environment. Like I've had a lot of in the last week got rid of a lot of stuff from my home where I sleep at night, and that's felt really good.
What you mean, like lodgers?
Well, one of them, yeah. Just want to go.
Jimmy, he doesn't mean that. Jimmy Jangles. It's fine, honest.
It is fine. Jimmy is
the gelato man.
Not anymore.
Oh, is he jacked?
He's the man with the van. Yeah, he's jumped.
He's actually jacked the gelatos.
Yeah.
Crikey.
He's no longer.
He loves that job, didn't
he? He's coming up to the mess this week.
Excellent.
To help us move some stuff, yeah. Clear some of the crap out of there.
There's a man with a sense of self. Have you seen his new tattoos?
My God, yes. Well, you can't miss him, can you?
There's hardly any left that ain't done now.
No, he's on a one-man mission to tattoo his entire body, which is mad, isn't it? I mean, he finds a sense of home in that. He loves it, and you can tell tattoos is all he's bothered about. Me and you, we obviously don't really care about them too much.
Well, I was looking to this week. There's Post Malone. You know the singer Post Malone?
No.
Jesus, you've got to get down with the kids, you know. Now, Post Malone is a singer who's recently had a song called Sunflower. You've probably heard that or you'd recognise it. And he's a facially tattooed man.
All right.
And in his facial tattoos this week, he put online that essentially he got a buzzsaw wheel on his face, which was then sort of spewing off blood droplets and so on.
Right.
And I think this is his 7th or 8th tattoo on his face. And I don't know whether or not I struggle with that from a perspective of what I'm used to. Because certainly anybody who basically put a tattoo on their face was basically just an idiot when I were a kid. I mean, it was the sort of thing you woke up with in a tattoo parlour when you'd gone to Mad in Marbella or something, where your mates were taking the piss out of you. It wasn't a particular choice. And yet facial tattooing goes back centuries and millennia with various people around the world, like the Maori people, for example. And many of the tribes around the world and peoples around the world have got a history of facial tattooing. But the white ones, it's unusual. And Post Malone is a white singer, United States singer, who's decided that this is him. And I guess I give more power to his elbow in terms of his choices. It's up to him. But it is unusual still, and still creates a fair amount of shock, don't it?
Yeah. I think David Bowie talked about how people of this generation were using tattoos more and more as a way of identifying with themselves or making them out to be different.
Body art, I guess, yeah.
Yeah, it is a rebellion of sorts, isn't it? Against, you've always got to find something to be different with, haven't you? Rebel against your kid, your parents, etc.
No tattooing in my home. I'd be interested actually when a friend of mine, Jono, tonight has been asking for advice on his 15, 16-year-old who's come home with his first love bite.
All right.
That's not a problem, like for Mr. and Mrs. Malone, is it? I bet they wish Post had come out. Mind you, why would they name him Post? Post?
Maybe he was born after Malone.
That could be it, or maybe.
Maybe
they did it through the letterbox or something. It's possible. Think of that one.
So
home. Have you had enough? You want to go home, or have you sort of?
No, I am at home. I'm at home at Bob. This is my home.
This is at the top of your mother's house. It's not your home, is it? Or can you have more than one home?
I actually meant Bob rather than.
Oh, you've come home to Bob.
Yeah, Bob is my home. This isn't my home anymore.
But Bob is.
Bob, I'm more at home at Bob.
How nice.
Yeah.
How nice. Okay, home.
home.
A sense of well-being, a sense of self.
Yes.
Gives you that feeling that you are home and in the right place. Centered. And if anyone's making cakes and coffee at the same time, and it's sort of all a bit lovey-dovey and so on, that's a sort of nice, sort of...
Is that your home?
Bluebirds singing in the trees, and all that kind of thing.
Just folding your curtains for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, why not?
What can I do for you, Mr. Sarah? That type of thing,
There's a butler in your home.
Well, yes. No, my butler calls me sir. But yeah. I wish. No, I don't wish, actually. That's something I find that I struggle with, actually. When people are serving me, I end up saying thank you about 4,000 times. Because I do appreciate when anyone does anything for me.
See, I don't have a problem with that if it's in the right setting. Like, if it's at a restaurant or whatever, you're paying them to serve you, so that's okay. If it's slavery, then yeah, fine. But if you're paying
£8.21 an hour, bloody slavery.
If you're paying for a service, serving for me doesn't have to be like a demeaning thing. In my opinion.
Oh, fair enough. No, I agree. Yeah, I'm here to serve.
Yes.
I'm the subservient one in Bob. So, are you alright if I carry on from home and go on for my second square?
Please do.
You can ask me if you like. No, you're not going to.
What's your second square, Mr. Sarah?
Thank you. Thanks for asking.
You're very, very welcome.
My second square
is
another political one to some degree, and another one in the news today.
Right.
And it's this wonderful utopian view of trade deals. Trade
deals, right?
Very, very much in the news at the moment, following our decision to leave Europe, and not to leave Europe, but the continent of Europe. That'd be a little bit different, although it probably happened in about a billion years. We'll probably have left Europe by then, from a land perspective.
That's how long they're trying to delay it for, aren't they?
But essentially, we have a situation at the moment in the UK where we're in a transitional period, having left the European Union, not Europe, but the European Union. And at the moment, we have 21 trade deals.
Right.
That will we're in a transitional period, so that none of those trade deals will actually come into effect until the 31st of December 2020, at which point this negotiation period with the European Union will also end, and that we will essentially either have a deal with the European Union, or we will fall back on World Trade Organization trading platforms.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to bring some clarity to that, to those people that think that might be a good thing. Because if anybody's got any money out there, I urge you to invest in large European multinationals and conglomerates. It's a very easy thing, because if anybody thinks that there will be an EU trade thing in place by the 31st of December 2020, I think they're living in cloud cuckoo land. I really, really do. The average length of time that the EU takes to actually get a trade deal over every aspect of life and every aspect of trade, everything from services to goods to banking to institutions to insurances and so on and so forth, the average length of time that's taken is about 7 years. In Canada's case, where they also talk about, we'll have a similar agreement to Canada, please, that took 9.5 years. And the reason why I'm imploring people to suggesting that they give some investment thought to big European companies is that essentially, at the very least, what we're giving these big companies is at least a year's head start, and probably up to 7, 8, 9 years head start in terms of the trading powers of the world. Now, people say, well, we can fall back on this WTO and so on and so forth. The truth is, we actually export 850 billion quids worth of goods to the world. Guess how much is in the European Union in terms of goods and services? 61.3%.
Yeah.
It's a good idea, isn't it? Our top 10 trading partners in 2018, there are 2 that ain't part of the European Union. And those are US, which is our biggest trading partner, and we actually have a trade surplus with the United States, which is one of those things that Donald doesn't like. He likes to have a deficit so that he can use his market pressures, if you like. We've actually got a surplus with the States. And the second one is China, which is our 5th biggest trading partner. But we have a massive, massive deficit with China, as most people do, to be fair. The only one of the UK, of the top 10 trading partners we have any semblance of a deal with is Switzerland. And they're the 10th biggest. And if I say that the US is about 170, 180 billion pounds a year in terms of exports, out of that 800 billion, Switzerland is 11.
Yes.
So we've got to deal with the one that's got 11. We've then got another 190 countries in the world to find some way of trading with. And the people who try and make this simple for us and say, what are you worrying about? We'll fall back on WTO trading agreements and so on. WTO trading agreements have massive tariffs within them. The average tariff within a World Trade Organization agreement, i.e. the amount of percentage that somebody's going to put on your goods to make them too expensive to sell in their country, unless you're prepared to give them a special deal, is 34%.
Yes.
Trading within the EU gives us a massive financial benefit to this country. And anybody who's ever said that it didn't, I've got to say, is just living in cloud cuckoo land. It did. Because the EU represents about 17% of the trading in the world.
Yeah.
And if we drop out of that, we essentially don't have a trade agreement with Germany, which is our 2nd biggest trading partner. France, 3rd biggest trading partner. All the various countries, Italy, Spain, and so on and so forth, we don't have trade agreements with any of them. Do you think they're going to give us them out of the goodness of their heart? No, because the best interests of their economies is essentially to make capital out of our decision to leave the trading bloc.
Yes. I mean, essentially, what you're doing there is putting a very rational, intellectual...
I just don't get it.
...numbers argument against why we shouldn't be leaving. Which is
no,
enough.
It's not necessarily that. We've left.
Well, yeah, we have.
We've left. We need to come up with a better strategy than essentially just saying, oh, fuck it, we'll go down this route. Because going down that route is a major, major, major stupid thing to do from a business perspective. And being a business consultant, I see money. I see how money is affected. I see how markets are affected by different ways of which people approach them, whether it be in terms of their costs, whether it be in terms of their products, whether they're better, cheaper, best, or wherever they fit in the market. The key factor is this is an economic blunder of the highest order, and we need to find better people to essentially negotiate our way out of this, because just to say we ain't doing it, it would just add, on average, to every good and service, 35% to our price of our goods.
Yeah.
The only way we can then compete with people like the European Union, who will then be selling their goods best part of 30-odd% cheaper than us, is to cut our costs and to essentially cut our cloth accordingly.
Oh yeah, the whole thing's an absolute shit sandwich, and I mean
Shit sandwich.
Well, I mean it is a shit baguette, if you want to call it that. I mean
it's not business sense.
No, it doesn't make any business sense. It's like, oh, my best customer's just walked in. Let's spit in his face. Oh, nice one. That's great customer
service. And
call
him names.
Yes, call him a shit ass. It makes absolutely no sense. But this is what will happen. I mean, I obviously agree, and saw this, a bazillion light years before. This is going to get worse and worse, in my opinion. It will.
The thing that annoys me,
what it will go, it will turn out that will end up massively being under competitive with the rest of the world. We don't have the right people in charge to actually give us a half decent chance of doing it. They don't actually give a shit themselves whether or not it does become a farce or not. So the country will go into ruin, in my opinion, and will end up. The only salvation we have, for me, is independence for Yorkshire and the rest of the country, counties of the and principalities of the United Kingdom, make it the disunited kingdom, and then we've got a chance of actually rebuilding something. Until the whole thing crumbles, there ain't no chance of that.
It's all right. Boris is going to build a bridge from Scotland to Ireland. We're all right.
Oh, terrific. Well, when that
what gets me is he hasn't put it in the shell a bit.
When that falls into the sea, is that going to be an extension of HS2? What's that about as well? It's like putting billions of pounds into this stupid fucking project that we're shipping over to the Chinese to cut 20 minutes down, like take half an hour journey to go to someone that nobody should be going anyway. London. Why do you want to go to London? I don't want to get to London 20 minutes quicker. I want to stay the fuck away from it.
Nice one.
Yeah.
Well, HS2, get me started on HS2. Makes no sense at all. Doesn't make any sense from, especially when you award the many of the contracts not to British firms but to overseas firms, and that is just utterly nonsense. It's about vested interests, as is Brexit, as is the negotiating tactics and so on. As you rightly say, most people who are involved in the negotiations or who are making the biggest noise about the negotiations actually couldn't give a shit what those negotiations come out of, because what it's creating is chaos. And what markets respond the most to chaos? The financial markets, when there is uncertainty. Now, if you're in charge and you are able to create chaos or to solve it, and your vested interest is in your personal finances, when you actually have brokers and large companies suggesting that chaos is actually a great thing for business. Warren Buffett, third biggest person in the world, financial biggest in the world, he has made somewhere around $90 billion out of chaos. And essentially knowing and following the political machinations and knowing when something is going to improve and therefore betting on it to improve.
Yes.
And knowing when something's going to go to cop.
He's a speculator.
He's a speculator. But if you have the inside knowledge of what the political processes are going to be, if you have the inside knowledge as to those people who are in power and you have their ear and you know essentially what they're going to do over the next few years or months or even days, in those circumstances you can then place your money where is the right place to do it, and those are the people who are benefiting from chaos. I ain't benefiting from chaos. My kids ain't benefiting from chaos. Nobody's kids are benefiting from chaos, but these people are, and they're in power, and it's wrong. And guess where the money's going that they're making out of all this?
Well, it'll be getting back to them somewhere, won't it?
No, it's going overseas. It's not been invested back into Britain, is it?
No, they'll take a cut of it, though, won't they, in some way, shape or form?
Well, only in terms of living expenses. What they do is they hoard it away. Well, Rees-Mogg is a classic example of that. £100 billion profit, paid not one fucking penny to the UK tax system. Because his companies are based in the Cayman Islands. Who benefits from chaos? William Rees-Mogg. Who backs Boris? Aaron Banks. Who backs... All these people are making the money. They're making the money out of chaos. And it is a personal decision, I honestly believe. And then, who owns the media? There is not a single tabloid, as far as I'm aware now, that actually has a head office that is not overseas.
Well, yeah, because you'd be quite smart to just get out of this country.
And most of the owners are also non-domiciled in the UK.
Yeah.
Who benefits? Why do they constantly push this xenophobic hatred agenda and also push for Brexit, say how bad everything is? They're not saying how good anything's going to be. They're purely and simply saying how bad things have been. They never push what has been actually good about a situation. It is about change and creating that change. And these people are wrong. And they are wrong for my kids. They are wrong for this country. And the sooner they are gone, the bloody better. I don't care who takes their place. I just don't want the financial people in charge. Capitalism gone mad.
Yeah.
In terms of other things that we trade, though, you might be interested. Do you know what the most thing we trade in the world? What commodity, what good do we trade most with the world?
Scotch eggs.
Scotch eggs?
Yeah.
No, it's not in the top 10.
No. Right.
Cars.
Cars, is it?
33.3 billion.
By foreign companies, though, are they not?
Well, they're all made here because we're part of the EU.
Yeah.
And the Japanese and the Americans came to make their cars here so that they could export them
Ship
within
them,
the UK out to Europe and take advantage of
mean-
this enormous European market.
Are they technically a British commodity if they're made here? I mean, if they're foreign owned.
Yes, they're British goods because they're made here.
Okay.
And the investment is made here in the people who work on these plants.
Right. Okay.
The government has certainly agreed to Nissan that they will be no worse off following Brexit than they would be otherwise.
Right.
I reckon that's a decision that's probably going to cost somewhere in the region of 20 to 30 billion pounds. 20 to 30 billion pounds. These figures just roll off our tongues nowadays.
Yeah.
Who makes benefits? The people in charge. So the others, power generators. Who'd have thought our second biggest export at 24.7 billion pounds would be power generators?
Right. Yeah.
Power stations and the means for infrastructure around the world. Medicines is the third. But the biggest single area that we do really well, and this is something that is really going to problem with British-based companies because of the regulatory systems that are in place across the world, is management, consultant and technical services. It's why many of the banks have taken so many of their top people out of the UK, because they can't trade from the UK post-Brexit in the same way as they would trade with Europe prior to that. And there's no doubt it's trading is the key.
I feel I've got very little to say on this issue because I agree with most
apologies.
of what you're saying.
Yeah.
So I agree.
Okay.
It's
Trade deals it is.
It's a shit shower show of the highest order, diarrhea and fireworks. It's all tits up.
We'll be all
well
right.
done, everybody.
We'll be all right if it's not blamed on the workers for being too expensive. Let's face it, £8 an hour. Some of these billionaires, they can't afford that. They'll soon start blaming you. Don't worry, you'll be a lazy, feckless idiot soon.
It's disgusting, isn't it?
Oh, sorry, I've been a. No.
That's the minimum wage. What a horrendous thing. Anyway, that's another subject, isn't it?
It is. So, Sci-Pi, what's your final square for this this bob of 2.0?
I forgot I had a second square, actually.
Oh, God, you're not on the camera. You're doing nothing. You enjoying that?
Sorry?
Your European beer.
Well, it's brewed in the UK, isn't it?
Only under license.
All right.
Now, they've specifically said unless Bojo sorts himself out, they're going to take it away.
Are they? Bastards.
We've never been any good at making lager.
Well, it's not sunny enough,
Sam
is
Smith's once had a lager.
Sam Smith's. Well, it's cheap, but it's not that
It's called
cheerful.
Ingerbrow. It was dreadful. Utterly dreadful. I'm not sure there are any good British lagers. Can you think of any?
No. Ale. Well, it's not. It's just not sunny enough, is it?
Have you remembered the premise of this show? 4 squares make a slice.
Yeah. Right. I thought we could just chill out.
Again?
Yeah.
Well, I'm okay with that.
All right. Good. This reminds me of the Detectorists.
Which one are you? Are you Lance or Andy? You're Andy, aren't you?
Well, I have to be. In this, yeah, he's the younger one, isn't he?
I'm not sure he is.
Smile up his face.
I'm not sure he is. Is he the younger one?
Of course he is. Yeah.
I'm going to look it up. I'm going to see how old Toby Jones is.
I wouldn't.
Toby Jones is a cricketer.
Is he?
Yeah. Yeah, he likes his cricket, does Toby Jones. He was apparently quite good once.
Was he?
I was quite
can
good
imagine
once.
Yeah, that one ball.
It was a Tuesday night in 1978.
Yeah.
So what's Wednesday night that was on?
Oh God.
There's a guy smacked a ball at me
February.
tonight. I was sat down writing a few notes for Bob, watching Thomas Pattinson, and this guy smacked this ball out of the net. And I saw it coming about 20 foot away. And I raised my foot, and it still hit my foot. Yeah. Reactions are not what they used to be, you know.
Tai Chi. That's what we should do more of. That gets your reactions going.
Is it?
Yeah, because you slow down, and allowing yourself to slow down means essentially that anything else slows down as well, so you can react faster to it.
So the world slows down when you're doing Tai Chi?
You know, in a way, yeah.
Phil Sheridan, if you're watching this...
This show's about 4 hours to fill.
Really?
Yeah. Slow down.
So it's an hour a square. Oh, I'm sorry, Phil. I'm sorry, Phil. That's a terrible thing to put you through.
That's why he doesn't watch much.
Oh, he's got lovely flowers, Phil.
That's the Tai Chi.
Yeah. Well, we need to get that in the meds, don't we?
We do. That is going to be great. It will happen.
Yeah.
It will happen, definitely. I've been told on this show that I touch my face too much. Well, no, not too much. I just touch my face, actually.
That's because you love yourself so much.
Do you think so?
Oh, God, yes. Oh, what? I'm going to spend some time with Lao Tzu this weekend. I'm going to find the real me. I'm going to find my home within myself. That's not loving yourself. Fuck off. That's like, what?
Yeah, well, I suppose it is in a lot of ways.
So is that
I
it
enjoy
then?
it.
I mean, is this your square then? Is that it? Have you really not brought any squares? For Bob 2.0, am I going to have to work even more on this new series than I have previously to try and bring you to some semblance of...
Instead of trying to pull me in your direction, Richard, why don't you just let me go on my own?
Well, I am. But there is some kind of...
I can feel the angst in you.
Well, it's only because we're live, isn't it?
We're live of sorts. You know what I'm going to do?
What?
We're ditching the radio stuff with it, but I will edit the videos into 4 squares so people can have a square, so they don't have to hear us for a whole hour.
Nice one. Because who wants to do that, eh?
Well, exactly.
Especially squares with no subject. I think I'm going to put this one up as Cronenberg.
I do have a square, actually. Do you want to wear it?
Or Cronenberg.
This one.
Actually, no, I don't know.
I tell you what. I'll give you a choice.
Go on.
We can either do board games or tanks.
Oh, tanks.
You want to do tanks?
Yeah.
Okay. So tanks. Well, I thought I'd bring tanks to Bob 2.0. I've been working quite hard on this one.
Oh yeah.
Because they're quite a feat of engineering.
What, fish tank?
Think? Well, that's actually where the tank, water tank, is how the tank got its name.
Yes, it was. Yeah.
Yeah. So
how did you know that?
Well, I've done my research. So a water tank. So yeah, you'd know, and it's actually a great code name because when there was no such thing as a tank, nobody knew what a tank was. So you could call things a tank on any communique, and the Germans, as it were, at this point, had no idea what the British were working on.
Okay. Oh, I see. So they called it water tanks.
No, they call it just a tank.
It's like the caterpillar track, isn't it?
Oh, right, yeah.
When they were really struggling in the war, and they essentially were making these brilliant new ways of getting vehicles around, they used real caterpillars.
No, they didn't. You had me for a quarter of a second then. Do you know when the first...
You can be tanked up, can't you?
You can be tanked up.
I'm getting that way.
Yeah, isn't it?
It's good beer.
It's not bad, is it?
It's very good.
1664. It doesn't go out of date either.
1664.
Ouais. Le brasseur avec savoir-faire depuis. Is that how you sound to say depuis?
Depuis is since, isn't it?
Since, yes. Since 1664.
Brewer of it with savoir-faire, with knowledge.
With knowledge, yes.
With great knowledge.
Fantastic.
Since 1664.
Well, there we go.
which is 4 minutes past 5.
4 minutes past 5. It still is, isn't it?
I've made you think twice, though.
You have, yeah. Do you know what do you know about tanks? Do you know much? Do you know what the most high tech tank at the moment is? What's seen as that?
No, I don't.
So the Russians, I can't remember
Is it
the
Sherman?
name of it. No, it's
Is it a Panzer?
Well, there's a Leopard tank, which is a European invention.
Leopard tanks were in the Second World War, very much so. They were Russian, weren't they?
No, they're European. There's
Are Russians not Europeans anymore?
Well, they're Eurasians, aren't they? The Russians.
Okay.
I can't remember what the name of. They do the T-14s more. They do the T models, and
Model T tank.
Yeah, they were used
in a window at the back, like
in the Iranian wars. But there was, I mean, you'd have been around for this. There was the decommissioning of a lot of tanks, wasn't there, in the 80s, where Reagan and Thatcher and the Soviet Union, as it were at the time, signed a treaty to decommission
SALT.
Tens of thousands of. Is that what it was called?
The Strategic Arms Limitation Treaty.
Okay.
Which was mostly about nuclear weapons, but was also about conventional weapons too.
Yes, and the tank was a huge part of that one.
And there was SALT 1 and SALT 2, if I remember rightly.
Okay. And yes, the Soviet Union had the most tanks in the world at that point, by quite a lot. They'd made thousands of, tens of thousands of them. I think they had something like 100,000 tanks. And what it turned out was they agreed to do this, but it was going to cost them $30,000 a tank to decommission it. It was a ridiculous amount. So what they ended up doing, they couldn't be reused anywhere. They couldn't become tractors. They were tanks. A tank was a tank was a tank. So they ended up with these huge car parks essentially full of tanks.
Wow. Okay.
And then so there was this thing where nobody was making any tanks at all. We were just keeping it quiet. But then Putin, not too long ago, I don't know the exact year, suddenly came out of the blue with this new, very high-tech tank, because no one had done anything on tank engineering from the First World War to the Second World War. Huge amount of development and evolution of the tank. It was like, whose tank's better this time round, and that was seen as a deciding factor potentially about who was going to win a war. But not at that point. They'd seen as futile in a lot of ways anyway, because you had, tanks. There were a lot of ways to get rid of a tank, essentially, with the Air Force and things like that. And once you get a tank in certain areas, then it's actually very vulnerable.
Oh, absolutely. The Russian front in 1940-41, essentially saved Britain on the grounds Hitler wanted to follow, or the general understanding is that he wanted to essentially follow Napoleon's and do better than Napoleon, if you like, and take Russia. Unfortunately, he decided to do it in the winter, which is a silly idea, so that all the tanks got stuck on the Russian steppes in the mud.
Yes.
And the snow and the ice.
Well, that's it. And I think it was in Kosovo as well. There was tanks were used for the first times in urban environments, and the guerrilla fighters figured out a way of basically bringing the tanks in as a bit of bait, like bringing them far too close in, then taking the first one out in the row, taking the back one out, leaving the rest in the middle absolutely stranded, and then taking them out one by one. So tanks from that point on were seen as actually pretty vulnerable. But these new Russian tanks, they look incredible. They, as you see, put out all the propaganda videos of these amazing tanks where they've got like anti-missile defenses. So they've got missile tracking things. So anything, anti-tank missiles would be taken out. And these tanks can go at something like 80 kilometers an hour.
Yeah, I know, they're bonkers. I was once down at Lulworth Cove in Dorset, and there is a lot of area there that's owned by the Ministry of Defence. And I went down the wrong road. And this lad in this massive, great big tank, I don't know whether it was a chieftain or God knows what, I went down the wrong road, and he started coming towards me. And as he came closer, there was a single track road, and I'd gone down the wrong one. And as he came closer, I suddenly realised that he wasn't going to stop. So I started backing up at an increasing rate. And he was just doing it to absolutely scare the living daylights out of me.
Yeah.
And it succeeded. It succeeded.
They're incredibly intimidating thing.
And they do say that if you bottle something like that, you have tanked it.
Right, I see.
They do, don't they? They say you've tanked it.
Okay, I haven't heard that
You not heard
before.
it? Okay, bottling it, tanking it, same thing.
And there was the famous man at Tiananmen Square, wasn't there? Who?
Oh, he didn't tank it.
No, it was incredible.
It was.
Like one guy in front of a tank, and this tank trying to move around him, and he's just moving and moving.
The other one is Yeltsin in Russia, when Boris Yeltsin became president of the USSR, or Russia as it then became, and he basically got on a tank and stood in front of a tank and so on. It's not to be recommended, really. I mean, they are quite extraordinary things. So any bravery that's to do with tanks, I've got to say, yeah.
Well, I can't remember who said it, but there was some fighters against tanks, and what they said was that as soon as you realise there's actually somebody in a tank, then they become human again. And it's just armour. I mean, the guy, I think his name Burstein, Albert Burstein, he's this Austrian inventor who came up with the first sort of notions of a tank, which is essentially something. He saw Austrian troops getting bombarded by shells. I think it was earlier than World War One, around the turn of the 20th century. And he didn't think, oh, what can we blitz the opposition with? He was like, how can I help our troops be defended from this onslaught of gunfire? So it's like they've got to be well armoured, but they've also got to be mobile still, and they've got to have a weapon. Otherwise, they're not a soldier really. So he took the idea from battleships, which were incredibly well protected, and took that and wanted a battleship on wheels.
When you've got that thing that nobody else can see, and you're putting your pegs in the holes, that's really well protected.
Well, there we go.
But if they walk round behind you, they can see it all.
Yeah, it's happened many times.
Battleships.
So yes, so he came from it. The tank actually came from like a defensive thought process.
Okay, I wouldn't play Joey Ray at battleships. I reckon he'd be good at that.
Probably would be, yeah.
Yeah. C4.
You've come up against Joey
destroyed.
Ray,
Oh, Connect 4 playing Connect 4 against Joey Ray, Si's brother. Not a chance.
It's a tough gig.
I've been online now and looked up a few sort of sneaky moves for Connect 4, I'll tell you, because he's got a few.
Yeah, there are no easy wins with Joe.
No easy wins at all.
Right.
Anyway, is that your tanks? Are you done with tanks? All tanked up?
I think so.
Sci-Fi the Poacher guy.
Mr.
Bob
Slade.
2.0.
2.0.
2.0. That was very European.
You're a trash. Darling, it's about that time, isn't it?
Nice one. Sci-Fi the Poacher guy, thank you very much. Nice one.